So she is still here. The other one has gone from this little section of time, and she is still playing the same part, using her imagination in every way she doesn't want in this world. And things went from bad to worse in her world. And they're still that way. And she can't for one moment believe she's the cause of the phenomena of her life. Oh no, she can't for one moment. And yet I had one long 75-mile drive with her, where it would take a whole lifetime to reap that harvest. What she said in that long drive from dinner back home. So man has a very weak memory, and he doesn't remember when he did these things. But there's a depth in man who does not forget. Be it warned in Galatians, be not deceived. God is not mocked. As a man sows, so shall he reap. Then we are told by the poet, you see yonder fields, the sesamum was sesamum, and the corn was corn. The darkness and the silence knew, and so is a man's fate born. So you don't recognize your own harvest, but it couldn't make a mistake. Everything is after the identical seed. You plant a seed. What seed was it? Well, you've forgotten what it was. Well, wait till the tree comes up, you'll know. Because it can't be other than what was planted. If I plant an oak, well then the oak is going to spring up into the oak tree. If I plant that sort of an acorn, that's going to be the oak tree. But if I plant something else, well then wait. If I've forgotten what I planted, wait, the harvest will show me. And man denies his own harvest. So I'm telling you that your own wonderful human imagination is God. It's the God of Scripture, the only God. Whether in the Old Testament you call him the Lord, or call him Jehovah, or call him God, or in the New Testament you call him Jesus, it's the same thing. This is the creative power in man, and that creative power in man is man's own wonderful human imagination. Why repeat unnumbered stories that I've told you in the past? I could start with new ones, but what? You know the technique. And the technique is simple. If all things are created out of man's human imagination, well then let him start imagining what he wants to be. And if he does, success will follow him. But in the meanwhile, try to prune the plant. Because when you hear for the first time that your imagination is God, it's an awful shock. Because as the poet said, behold this vine, I found it a wild tree, whose wanton strength had swollen into irregular twigs. But I pruned the plant, and then it grew temperate in its vain expense of useless leaves, and knotted, as you see, into these clean, full clusters, to repay the hand that wisely wounded it. So when you first find that the vine spoken of in the Bible, I am the vine of eternity, I am the true vine, and my Father is the vine dresser, and you discover, well, that vine is my imagination. For then the whole thing went into leaves, useless leaves and branches. It was not producing grapes. Then I start to prune the tree by observing what I'm imagining in the course of 24 hours. It becomes a habit. Then the next day, I do a little bit better. The third day, better still. By the end of a week, I am in the habit now of watching what I'm imagining. And don't wait, instantly prune it. Stop it. Stop imagining. Don't indulge yourself. I have heard people say to me, but just one more second. It's such a pleasant thing to tell him off. And so in his mind's eye, he is telling off someone, all in his imagination, knowing he's going to reap the fruit of it. Now, if you know that, you aren't going to simply spend an extra 5 seconds of precious time in finishing that emotion. Stop that emotion and get on a new trend. And then you prune the plant. And finally that plant's going to reward you with clean, full clusters because you wisely wounded it. And then you keep that vine going, and the vine will pay enormous dividends. I know from experience. When you go to bed at night, let your last thought be something noble, something wonderful, that you are now, or those you love are now, what you would like to be, and drop off into the deep in that state, and make it a habit. As we are told, you plant a seed, and then the seed becomes an act, and the act becomes a habit, and the habit becomes a character. So if I seem to repeat myself, it's because I have to. Because if anyone here tonight could honestly tell me that in the course of 24 hours they have observed what they were imagining and had not a thing to find fault with, well, I would like to hear that, and I will not call you a liar because I'm not here to judge. But it would be a marvelous thing if you could tell me that. But I know that all of us are victims of habit, and we get into the habit of this internal conversations that are not pleasant. And we think that no one observes, no one sees. So as we are told in the book of Ezekiel, he said, Son of man, go down and see what the elders of the house of Israel are doing. So I went down to the house to observe the elders of the house of Israel. And there they were, each in his own room, carving on the wall. What wall? The wall of your own interior, the wall of your skull. And they were making abominable things. And they say, well, no one sees us. The Lord has forgotten us. They thought because they did it in the silence that no one knows, when the only reality is their own wonderful human imagination. And that is fully aware of what man is doing, and rewards man, good, bad, or indifferent, with his imaginal act. Now, no one can tell me that you could not tonight start to become, if you want to be prosperous, that's a relative term. What you mean by prosperous would not be what another means by it, but what you, and just take yourself, what would it feel like if it were true? Just what would it feel like? And then go about your business feeling as though it is true, instead of spending your precious time reading about Howard Hughes. Well, who cares? I asked a friend of mine who asked me if I'm following the story. I said, you know, he doesn't know me, and I don't know him. And I'm quite sure that if I met him, he would not really buy me a sandwich. So what am I concerned about? He doesn't pay my rent, he doesn't buy my clothes, he doesn't contribute to my way of living, and I'm supposed to be concerned about what he's doing? He doesn't interest me. None whatsoever. So I must spend my precious time reading about Howard Hughes. My heart almost goes out to the man Irving who wrote the thing, because the so-called wise editors of Life and the wise ones of the other one got taken, and they're so wise, taken for $500,000. And so I'm not saying that I would want to duplicate it in my life, but it almost serves them right to pull that upon the people and throw it. Who cares about Hughes, really? What is his contribution to life? So he has made $2 billion. So what? Hasn't bought you a dinner, hasn't done anything for you, and so what is your concern? You take the story of Scripture, see it as it really was intended in the beginning to be seen, that your own wonderful human imagination is the God spoken of in Scripture. And by him all things were made, and without him was not anything made that is made. Start right in this room. You're wearing clothes, you're sitting on chairs, you're in a house. Everything here was first only imagined. The clothes you're wearing, the chairs on which you're seated, the building that now houses you, everything here was first only imagined. And then it becomes an objective fact. So objective reality is solely produced through imagining. Now you want to objectify something entirely different from what you have so far.